With that, we're convening members of our diplomatic community, former Canadian Ambassador Jeremy Kinsman and former White House official Larry Haas, who is also a senior fellow at the American Foreign Policy Council. Larry, I will begin with you. What does the United States have against Canada anyways?
Well, it's the difference, frankly, between the majority of Americans who I do believe subscribe to notions of free trade and a president that ran on and is governing on the basis of an angry part of the electorate that feels that they're getting screwed by trade, they're losing their jobs, wages are stagnant, and it's all because of competition from abroad. And you have the clash, frankly, between a long tradition in America of free trade and this rather radical White House with different views. I don't think NAFTA is going to die in the end, but needless to say, we're going to have a lot of bumpy moments in the coming months. Jeremy,
not going to die? What do you think?
Look, it's like that parrot in what was it? He's just resting. He's just sick. I don't know. I thought that this was a terrible round. I thought that the positions that the United States government negotiators tabled were outrageous. It occurred to me that there was no other explanation for this. Then they were looking for a way to give Trump his win, and his win would be pulling out of this thing. Trump doesn't build things. We thought he was a builder. He's a destroyer. He pulls out of things. That's how he gets his win. And I think that's where it's heading. I thought that Chrystia Freeland, in her remarks with the other two, was strong and to the point. The quote you just have was absolutely, I think, right on. I thought later on in a press conference, maybe the PMO or somebody got to her and said, tone it down, make nice. That's what we're doing these days, making nice and hoping it'll all work out. She sounded much too optimistic. She went on and on 5 or 6 times that somehow it was a great achievement that they've agreed to meet again. I think that's kind of like the guy who's condemned to death who gets the word that the execution is postponed a month.
Larry, is it possible that the president really just wants this deal to get blown up so he can make separate deals with Mexico and Canada?
It's obviously possible. And I understand Jeremy's pessimism, and I don't necessarily blame him. But I hearken back to another recent development, which is the Iran nuclear deal, which President Trump called the worst diplomatic deal in American history. And he had the opportunity to, in essence, walk away from it. And he chose a middle ground, which is that he decided not to certify Iranian compliance, but he didn't completely walk away from the deal. And I think, frankly, that's where we're headed with NAFTA. Now, I may turn out to be wrong, but I think that he's playing to his base here. And I think in the end, he'll do a lot of complaining. There'll be a renegotiation. And somehow, I think over the course of the next year, we're going to cobble things together. But it's not a firm prediction. It's more of an inkling more than anything else. I think that's where we're headed.
Jeremy, with eggs, milk, and even turkeys coming up in the supply management debate, by bringing that up, isn't Canada forced, the Canadian government forced to sort of back away to protect itself domestically?
I don't know. Scott, a lot of Canadians don't like supply management. I mean, people who drink milk and eat ice cream and chicken, we're kind of tired of it. But look, it's got some political costs in a certain number of ridings in the country. We all know that. That's what it's always been about. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's good for the government now to begin to get into the concessions there when the other side is making demands that clearly are unacceptable. There isn't going to be a deal with those various poison pills that the United States side let go. I have no doubt that behind the scenes, of course, people are looking at negotiating options on all sectors, including supply management. So, yeah, it should be negotiable. Like everything, it should more or less be negotiable, except the things we've already negotiated fundamentally before.
Larry, I want to jump now to Bombardier. They had that huge deal now. They've got a big brother in Airbus. How do you think this goes over with the Commerce Department, which essentially punched Bombardier over and over with those tariffs?
Well, it's really unclear. Early indications out of the Commerce Department are that perhaps it's not going to be acceptable. It is a subject of, obviously, interpretation. There is a concept under trade law in which, in essence, you can't get around tariffs by making what are blatant efforts to circumvent them somehow, and this may fall under that. On the other hand, it is the case that with this Airbus deal, we're going to have, if the planes are actually made, they're going to be made for U.S. Customers in a plant in the United States. So, it's very clever on the part of Bombardier to enter this agreement with Airbus and try to get around the Boeing-induced tariffs. And we'll have to see how it comes out. So I'm not really quite sure. Certainly, it's an effort to find some way out of the dilemma. But whether it's a little bit too cute by half, we'll have to see how the Commerce Department comes down on this.
Jeremy, Airbus now owns 50.01% of the C-Series program. Has Bombardier essentially sold off its soul a little bit and put Canadian jobs at risk?
Both are true. This plane, the C-Series, was Bombardier's big shot. It was a big dream. It was a totally new aircraft. And they actually couldn't bring it off. That's what this fundamentally says. And though there is this proposal that the planes would now be mostly manufactured through a new Airbus plant in Alabama, that obviously isn't great news for the workers of Quebec. It is probably great news for the people in Northern Ireland who make the wings for the planes, that their jobs will be saved. I think it's great news for the aircraft. Because the aircraft is going to have a lot more sales scale out of the huge stature and networks of Airbus. But it is not a great day for Bombardier. And the fact that the stock has gone up something like 25% today tells you that.
Jeremy Kinsman and Larry Haas joining us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.